Michael Johnson, welcome to Acquiring Minds.
Will, I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me. Thanks for the podcast. I really would not be here without your podcast and all the guests you've had on. I've connected with a lot of them and it managed to transact. So I'm just so excited to be on this side of it.
Awesome. Well, congratulations, Michael. Thank you for that. We're gonna hear this story today. You're only a couple months into ownership of a printing business, a business you found very quickly in your search. So interestingly, printing businesses are not uncommon among searchers. I think you might be the third, maybe fourth Acquiring Minds guest who bought in this broader category of printing. So we're going to spend time on what it is that draws searchers, of course, what you liked about your business and what particular niche you operate in, but we'll get there. Start us off with some background on you, please, Michael.
All right. So I've always been a hustler. As a kid, when I got candy from Halloween or Christmas or whatever, I wouldn't eat it. I'd save it and wait for my brothers and sisters to eat all of theirs, and then I'd sell it to them a few months later. Kind of that delayed gratification.
We call that price gouging, Michael, but I respect the hustle. Yeah, they call it what you want.
I was making money, okay? And the government was not interfering with my operation. So that I kind of always been a hustler, and graduating high school, 9/11 happened in my junior year. I joined the Marine Corps. Just didn't know what else. I was kind of angry and emotional and joined the Marine Corps. So went infantry, was an anti-tank missile guy, machine guns, 2 tours in Iraq, Katrina relief effort in New Orleans as well. Those were kind of the highlights of it. Right. Getting out of the Marines, I got out as a sergeant, which is pretty good, an E5. Got out as a sergeant, didn't really know what I was going to do next. Started working in restaurants and kind of taking some classes. And I'll say from there, got a job at a metal fabrication shop. Actually, it was my fiance's stepdad. It was his business. And I worked there for several years, and with the thought of maybe taking it over one time. I always getting out of the Marines, I had kind of an entrepreneurial itch, but didn't quite know how to do it because I didn't have any money or education or anything. But then all of a sudden this happened. So I started working at the metal fab shop, worked there for several years, and ended up not working out. And I left there after a couple of years. With really no money, very little education. I started on the floor, worked up to operations manager, and then left. Once again, no money, no education. So got back to school, finished my degree, started working at a crane and rigging company. They had actually just done an acquisition of a smaller. They were from Greensboro. I'm in North Carolina. They were in Greensboro, North Carolina, and they acquired a location in Durham. So I came on after the acquisition to run their operations. Mm-hmm. Worked there for several years, but I knew that entrepreneurial itch kept burning in the background. And I got my schooling in, and the school said, you need money. You have to have money to be an entrepreneur. And it's like, well, let me start figuring this out. Let me see what can I do to make some money. So I just started doing anything I could, whether it was, buying and selling, doing some retail arbitrage, driving some Uber in the off hours. And after a few months of that, I had a couple $1,000s. And then I was like, well, maybe there's a business that I could just buy instead of starting my own, I could buy something. So I started on Craigslist, and there's a section for business. And I started looking around there, and all of a sudden I found a vending machine for $3,000. So Will, this is actually my first acquisition. I went to my wife. We had about $10,000 in savings at the time. And I said, honey, I'd love to take out $3,000 of that and buy this vending machine.
And Michael, how old were you at the time?
So this was 2016, 2017. So I guess, was it 2024? I'm about to turn 40 next year. I'm early 30s, I guess.
Yeah.
So 31,
okay,
32.
Okay, great.
Maybe
$3,000 vending machine on Craigslist, 30% of your savings.
Yes. Acquisition number one.
What does wife say? Or now, at this point, she's your wife?
Yes. We're married at this point. She said, when are you going to pay us back? And I told her within a year. I said, I think we can pay us back within a year. And she said, okay, do it. And so, did a little cashier's check, wrote up a little 1-page. We're transacting for this amount. This is the serial number on it. You're not going to bother me anymore. Now, this vending machine was in a hotel, and it was in the employee break room. So it wasn't for the guests or anything. So it was on the cheap, guest vending machines in hotels, right? You can sell a candy bar for $17 or something, you can sell it for ridiculous amounts of money. This needs to be a little more price conscious. But the guy I bought it from, he actually had a lot of off-brand stuff in there. And there was actually another vending machine right next to it too with competing products. So quickly I got I realized that the off-brand stuff wasn't selling. And that was just kind of knowing your customer a little bit. Most of my customers I felt were the night shift for the venues or for the events. So when there's a conference in town and the waiters and bartenders are there, they get hungry, they get some cash from tips, and then they come back and have a munchie. And so they want Doritos at that time. They don't want Tom's potato chips. They don't want some off-brand crap. They want Doritos. They want Cool Ranch, And so I got rid of all the off-brand stuff, put this stuff in. One day I was in there and just filling the vending machine, and usually there was nobody there, but there happened to be a bunch of cleaning ladies sitting around. And I said, "Hey, what do you guys want to see in here?" And they said peanut M&Ms. And I ran to Sam's Club, grabbed a case of peanut M&Ms, came back, gave them all a peanut M&M, and filled it up, 2 rows of peanut M&Ms. And I came back to fill the vending machine 2 weeks later, and the competition was gone. And within about 3 months, I was bringing in about $400 extra in profit. I was making about $800 a month on that thing, and about half of it is profit. So $400
Fantastic.
a month for years and years on end, which guess what? I didn't need it to live on. It just, after I paid back the savings, the loan to myself, that just went right into kind of my business account.
So a bit of a vending machine turnaround story there, Michael. But also it does suggest that, I don't know, maybe it was just this one case, but that there could be money in vending machines. Vending machine routes are little businesses you'll see transact or see for sale on Biz Buy Sell. Did you ever get the inkling to build a vending machine empire? $400 a month for a couple of Sam Clubs runs sounds pretty good.
I did. So one of the issues I saw too was I wasn't always going through like the candy bars, they usually expire 6-9 months later. So you didn't have a problem with those, but the chips are a lot of times only 30 to 45 days. So you've got to move them. So I was throwing out some inventory as it expired. And so I just kept on Craigslist and watched for new machines to come available. I ended up with 3 machines. The other were in smaller locations, maybe doing 50 to 100 a month. But then COVID hit and everything kind of shut down. But I was I had just bought my 3rd machine right as COVID was hitting. So that way I should have been closer to $500 a month had everything played out at least. And it could have gone to more, but yeah, I was actively engaged in it. I kept on Craigslist just looking for it. Anytime I heard somebody, the people that were in the vending machine industry in the area, I knew them. I talked to them. I said, if you guys are selling anything, let me know. Some people had ridiculous expectations, like they'd be at I know I looked at a few locations where they were doing, $300 a month and they wanted $6,000 for it. And I'm like, I'm not, that's ridiculous. And they're like, well, the machine's worth that. And I go, the business isn't, right? I understood that. And this is before I even knew about buying a business and multiples and all that. It just seemed ridiculous to pay $6,000 to make $300 a month or whatever. Excellent. But yeah, I think vending machines are great business. I would probably still have my route had COVID not hit at the time it did, and new baby and all the other good stuff that we're going to get to.
Okay. Well, a first success, a first feather in your cap as an entrepreneurial venture. Then what? So
I kept working, and I was making the money on the vending machines, and so at this point I had a little bit of cash. I started investing it because the market, this was 2017, 2018, the market's going just straight up. Any stock you buy, you're just going to make money on. So I started investing in really trading more, and I started writing about it just because that's, I could just put that content out there. Maybe somebody picks it up, maybe it doesn't. If nothing else, it's a journal of my experience. And so I wrote a blog for about 2 years. I put it up on a real website, so I was hosted. I had an editor looking over things. And so 2 years, I think I spent a grand total of maybe $800 or $900 and never made a dime off of it. I think I had 12 followers. So one day I'm at a stock trading conference, and all the while I am still working my W-2 for the crane and rigging outfit on 9 to 5. So I go down to the stock trading conference, and they say, by the way, we're looking for writers to join our team. If you're a writer, go talk to Lisa. And so I go in the back, I talk to Lisa. Lisa says, yeah, give me your email. I'll give you mine. We exchange. And then she gave me a gig and said, all right, here you go. Here's a gig for you. And I think the first month I wrote for her, I made $1,800 writing. And so I was very able to consistently start writing for her and making about $2,000 a month or so. And so the story goes that all that money I spent getting into it, right, in the years, just getting those reps, showing up, writing that blog, And the first month that I actually started making revenue, I was able to basically pay myself back for everything I had put into it and then buy a brand new computer, which is the computer I am talking to you on right now. So COVID hits, right? I had just moved in, my W-2 moved me into an outside sales position. COVID hits, nobody wants an outside sales guy coming around. So I was kind of doing both for a while because the market was going crazy. The content we were putting out was just doing remarkably well. And so I basically sat at home with 2 computers for a while and was answering emails and scheduling things for the cranes and whatnot. And then over here, I was writing a blog post or a newsletter for my client. All right, so COVID's hitting. We've got a baby on the way. August of 2020, baby arrives, little Everly. She's the best. But it was a very difficult birth. And I just kind of coming out of it, I knew I could not do both anymore. And so I call up Lisa to quit and tell her I couldn't write for her anymore. I just didn't have the bandwidth. And she asked me, what does it take to make you full time? And I said, 20 cents a word. And she said, done. I was like, oh, crap, I should have asked for more. So I think I was making like 15 cents a word at the time. And I go, 20 cents a word and guaranteed, I can't remember exactly what I asked for, but like just so many newsletters and blog posts a week. And she said, done. Absolutely. We can absolutely do that. We put it in writing. And next day I went and put in my notice and they said, well, if you're good, you can just leave. And I go, all right, I'll just leave. And so at that point I was a solo entrepreneur and I did that for the next 2 years. And Lisa ended up that changing over, but I managed to have enough contacts and move to a different agency and work there for a while. So 2 years in, I'm solo entrepreneur, but then everyone starts getting called back to the office and the price to stay at home got real, real cheap. And so all of a sudden, I couldn't get 20 cents a word anymore. People were offering 7 cents a word and whatnot. And I'm like, I'm not going to go play in the mud. I tried a few other things, just trying to get something else going to keep my own, stay a solo entrepreneur. And eventually I ran out of runway. I ran out of cash. I basically had a number. I'm like, if I'm under $40,000 in cash in my business account, I need to go find a W-2. And that was always that level that I had. So I got below my $40,000, went and found a W-2.
Okay, carry on.
So I started selling steel for one of my vendors. When I was fabricating, I bought steel from Chatham Steel. I saw an ad online for them. I called up the outside sales guy. Hey, can you put me in? Can you put my resume in front of whoever needs to see it? He said, absolutely. Within about a month, I had a job there. So started working on a sales desk, making some commissions and saving back up. I sat there for about 1.5 years. And in April 2024, I had better than $50,000 in cash again and said, okay, it's time for me to start looking for a business to buy. Because I go, this time I can't go do it by myself, right? I can't be the janitor and the accountant and the producer and accounts payable and receive. I know I couldn't do it all. So I kind of said, okay, the next thing I do is going to be a business and it's going to be existing and it's going to have employees to do the day-to-day. And then I kind of once I had the cash around to start the search, that's when I started Googling and let the algorithms take me where they needed to take me. And sure enough, found Walker DeBell's book. And
when is this now, Michael?
That's April this year.
April. Okay. We're at April 2024. You do a little Googling and find Buy Then Build by Walker DeBell.
Yep. That's it.
Great. Mm-hmm. Okay.
And of course, in his first chapter, I think he references the Harvard Business Review, How to Buy a Small Business. So I put the book down for a second, order that book, and pick up and read again. I think I went through Walker's book in a weekend, maybe 4 days. Like I just ripped through it. I was like, this is great. This is such great information. This is giving me some of the step-by-step that I didn't know. And it's also just opening my eyes. Also discovered acquiring minds. I had a 40-minute commute in each direction. Because I lived in Cary and I was driving to Durham. So I was like, I was putting in 1.5 hours every single day and just put this podcast on and started listening to it. And it was just such a great resource because it's coming from so many different directions, right? Yeah, there's a lot of the MBA guys, there's a lot of the private equity guys, but there's also quite a few people like me who kind of got scrappy and just did it. Mm-hmm.
Any stories that were particularly impactful that you can remember?
I remember Don Bluth's just because he was a Marine. And his story came on when I already was under LOI, but he was a Marine. And Dan Verboski, he's a Marine in the sign industry. And so I'm in the print industry. I'm in a weird in between the sign and print industry. So, but I reached out to Dan, I reached out to Dom, and they both came back to me within a couple days. And I even talked to Dom. I've talked to Dom a few times just on the phone, kind of give him my background and him asking questions about it. I reached out to Jesse Sapphire up in New York City. We've messaged on LinkedIn a few times as well. So I don't know if there was one story that necessarily stood out and inspired me, but it was like, I was just hearing the right things at the right time. Like one of your guests came on, and it might've been Dan Verboski there, that said, if you were in the military, you have the skills to do this. And if you were an NCO, a non-commissioned officer, which is exactly what I was, and I was always a hustler there too. I was we called them crack deals. There was no actual crack transacting, but like I would trade, like, what ice is worth in the desert? It is worth gold. All right. It is. And I had access to ice. So I could go around and make some deals and, get light bulbs or get some electrical service or get an unregulated internet connection, something like that. So I was always kind of making the crack deals.
Is that how our military operates? I don't find this reassuring.
What's that?
That everybody's horse trading their supplies while at the,
No, you're not.
Base.
I don't know. I was very good at it, and I made things happen when I needed to make things happen.
Fair enough.
I got a NAM, a Navy Accommodation Medal, and it's funny. The write up, I didn't do anything in the write up because they couldn't. I don't think they could put that I was horse trading, but they were like, "You want me?" They were very happy with my contributions. Well, and part of that too was I was working on a military transition team. So I lived on a base with about 25 Americans and about 3,000 Iraqi soldiers. And so there was a whole lot of just figuring things out. And there wasn't a playbook for training up a new military. And also the people that we're working with, there wasn't a good organization, not to get political too much here, but like we had the whole anti-Ba'athist party in Iraq. Well, there was only one political party in Iraq. So if you were in the government or knew how to run things, you were a member of the Ba'ath party. And now we just kicked out everybody that knew how to keep their army and infrastructure running. So there was just crack deals had to be made.
Wow.
So, yeah.
I bet that was an experience.
Yeah. A whole nother podcast.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we are in April. You found Buy Then Build and the HBR guide. You're reaching out to people that you're hearing on Acquiring Minds. What does your search end up looking like? Financial criteria, first of all, and then after that, what sort of industry, et cetera, were you looking at?
So I took Walker DeBell's advice and went industry agnostic. And I put together kind of a little one-pager, which is inspired by him, but I know he talked about putting out that search criteria. I put out a one-page sheet, a little bit about me, a little bit about why buying a business is a great idea, and then also where the money's coming from. So my requirements were at least 150,000 in SDE and multiple employees to run the day-to-day. And I also wanted to look for a company that was eternally profitable. Something that and was dealing with repeat customers. It was another high item that I wanted to reach. The business also would be looking for some sort of operational advancement or need a new sales or marketing strategy. Something that was either running well and poised to grow, or something that just needed to be kind of gutted and fixed and made more efficient.
Oh, you were willing to do something that was not in good shape, that kind of needed a turnaround.
I was open to something in good, not in great shape, that I thought I could get better and make it run better and more efficiently, or something that was running really well that was poised to go to the next level.
Sure.
And then I just had a few things. I actually limited. I said I don't want to pay more than $2 million. And that was just because I was looking at like home equity and cash on hand and everything. And I go, basically, if I have to come up with 10%, 200,000 is about as much as I can come up with personally. And also I wanted to make sure I could get my hands around it. I didn't want to take on a $10 million company with outside investors and all this. And it might have been just too complicated for me. I wanted to make sure it was something that was small enough that I could get in there, get my, roll up my sleeves and fix if I needed to, essentially.
Okay.
And then just a couple things. I said no tech, no retail, no restaurants. I think that those are pretty standard excluders, although there's been people that have been successful in those fields. So
Yeah, we've had a couple of great stories about restaurants, at least.
yeah, the restaurant, I want to say that one in the college town, that was a really great story. I can't remember exactly who that was.
Yeah, Jarrett Burke, another vet.
There you go. Yep.
Up in New Hampshire.
Oh yeah, he was a vet too. Yes.
This one pager, Michael, was something that you attached to outreach to brokers, or what did you do with this one pager exactly?
So I started creating it, had it, and I was about to start reaching out to brokers, but I was also cruising, biz buy sell. Mm-hmm. And then this print company pops up, and I go, oh, well, I'm industry agnostic. And then I'm reading through it, and I go, this literally meets all the criteria. So I reach out to whoever posted the ad, and I figured out what the company was very quickly. They didn't say what it was, but they didn't hide it very well either. Like the person, her name was Kate that had posted it. Well, you search her name, and sure enough, it comes up SpeedPro LinkedIn. So it was pretty obvious what the company was.
So the owner posted it directly, or no? The broker did, and then you could go. Okay. So it was a franchise.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was a franchise. So the corporate franchisor posted it, kind of acting as a broker. So I reached out to them. They hooked me up with the salesperson for the franchise, and they basically pre-qualified me. I think he was actually the first one that I sent the one pager to. I said, hey, just so you know, I'm on the search. This is my criteria. Here's a little one page about me. He said, oh, this is great. Nobody has something like this. Gave me a couple forms to fill out. Your basic, do you have some money? And I think, just basically your financial situation.
Yeah.
So I filled out the form. They pre-qualified me to be a franchisee, and then they introduced me to the owners.
And so you said that you had basically $200,000 of your own money was going to be your ceiling there.
Yes.
Great. And you wanted $150,000 of SDE that was your floor on earnings potential. Where did that come from? Just based on kind of replacement income or lifestyle, or where did that number come
replacement income. I kind of looked at it as probably there'd be 3/3 there. If there was, and this is something I heard on your podcast, like $50,000 was going to be for my income, just a bare minimum replacement. That's not putting anything into savings, not contributing to a retirement account or anything like that. Just bare minimum, keeping the bills paid. $50,000 to pay the loan, and I figured what the other $50,000 was.
To reinvest.
I basically had what's that?
To reinvest in the business.
There you
to
go.
Put
Yes.
back into the business.
Yeah. So
okay.
Yeah. So that's kind of where my head was at on it. My wife was making a really good income at the time during this.
Well,
search.
I was going to ask. So $50,000 for you with a family. Now you have baby Everly, who's now 4. Do you have any other kids?
Just the one right now.
Okay. 50,000 doesn't strike me enough to support a single person in a major city, let alone 3. But you've just answered it. Your wife has a job. Were you expecting to be able to push that 50,000 number higher over time? I mean, what would that?
Yes. This was.
Give us more color on that.
This is the bridge I need to get over, right? And that if I can make $50,000 a year, I know I can pay my bills. Based where we were at that time. Like I said, my wife was making about 120, 130 a year at that point too.
Okay. So you were calculating kind of the full family income.
Yes.
Excellent. All right. And then what did you feel about the fact that this was a franchise business? Well, actually, first, Michael, tell us a little bit more about this business.
All right. So
and then we'll get into franchise.
It was fascinating. So I'm really just starting my search, and they say let your network know. I'm part of this run group. And I mentioned it to the guy I'm running with, Stefan. I go, Stefan, yeah, by the way, I'm going to look at a business I might buy this week or this coming week. And he goes, really? Well, what kind of business? And I go, it's a printing business. And he goes, did you know Brian has a printing business and he's trying to sell it? And I was like, I did not. I thought Brian was an engineer.
Who's Brian?
Brian's another guy in the run club. I've been running with him for 3-4 years. Like I said, I thought he was an engineer. He's an engineer by trade, but apparently has a sign and printing business that he's been running for 16 years. So I run up. No, actually, it was his full time. He's a certified engineer when he needs to be, but that's his thing. He runs the business. So
okay.
I said for some reason it just never came up in conversation, I guess, over the years running with him. We usually talked about kids or something,
Sure. So what does Brian say about the experience of being a print
well, he
business
talked
owner,
about how it's
printing
just
business
all
owner?
these repeat customers. He doesn't advertise, and he's doing about $500,000 a year. Just him and one other guy. He's basically running the same equipment that the guy over at SpeedPro is running. Some of his equipment's a little nicer, some of it's a little not nicer, but they're in the same space. And he has just kind of a different niche. He has different customers that come to him and just keep buying from him year after year after year. Mm-hmm. And that's the nice thing about the print business, or at least where I'm at, this wide format business, is these are not super high ticket items. So there's not a whole lot of competition. You can go other places, but like once the problem is solved, a lot of times this is a very small item on the balance sheet for people or on the expense report. So it's like the problem solved. Let's just keep working with the guy. Yes, I could go shop it out and save $150 maybe, but for most businesses, it's not worth the hassle. And we're in the B2B space, which is really nice because once again, time is money. It's not, I know Michael's going to do it. I know Jeff or Brian's going to do it. They don't, once the problem's solved, the problem's solved.
And what does wide format mean? What is wide format printing in the B2B nature of this printing business? Maybe kind of break down a lay of the land. Most people think printing business, they think, what is it called? FedEx, Kinko's, or just
so
FedEx, where you go in and you get 100 copies of whatever you needed printed. But that's obviously not what we're talking about here.
Yeah, no. So that's the small, and I'm learning all this too. So if any print guys are listening and I mess it up, I'm sorry. But so that's basically the small format. Yeah, they'll do flyers, business cards, brochures, booklets, things of that nature. We have printers that are 54 to 60 inches wide, and so we print things like graphics and decals for vehicles. We could do full vehicle wraps. 50% of our business here is vehicle wraps. We do trade show displays, and some of that is printing and then putting it together with some hardware to give you a really nice display. We do wall murals. So those will print off in sheets. Even what you see behind me here, if you're watching on YouTube, this is a wall mural that we put up, and it's actually put up in series of 54-inch wide strips. And so we've been doing those. I do those at churches now. A lot of churches, it's actually a low. You can go and I can put up a big wall mural for $3,000, and compare that to like a renovation project. You're probably looking at $20,000 to start something. You can get a really big impact from a wall mural without a whole lot of investment.
And some of this stuff, like you touched on with Dan Verbosky, some of this stuff does start to feel like the line between this and signs is blurry.
Yeah, so we do, and we are, and that's it. Like a lot of the wide format people would argue they're more on the signage industry than the print industry. So we do also a lot of signs in terms of interior wayfinding. We do a lot of signs at the mall, at our local mall here, but a lot of the temporary signage too. The Santa line starts here, donate to this cause this coming week or this coming month. So I hope that's kind of showing a little bit of what we do. I'm actually doing a home show. They're doing a big home show at one of the local convention centers here, and we're doing the schedules, the entertainment schedules, the seminar schedules, the wayfinding, and then we're putting some banners up outside. And so that actually is a little bit adjacent to Adam Markley with his flagpole and banner business, which Adam Markley actually ended up. He was a great connection at the 11th hour of the deal that I made. I want to hear that story because it's a good one, and what Adam told you was great. So we're gonna get there in just a sec. Okay.
But Michael, it's often said that kind of printing is dying. Frankly, what they're talking about there is kind of small format stuff, and let's take Jesse Sapphire as an example. He does small format is what he is. That's the correct vocabulary.
Yeah, and he does some wide format too. He was an encouraging note when he was on because he even said wide format is growing. That's a great space to be in. And I reached out. I'm like, thank you for saying that. You just took another brick off my shoulder.
Oh, good. Because he does small, as I recall, he does small format, but he has this incredible niche of basically big Wall Street firms who need hundreds of pages for investor, memoranda and stuff like that. So it's this niche where there's a lot of demand for pieces of paper to be printed with words on them.
Yes.
But in general, that is, obviously going away with the digitization of information and digitization of everything. Right. So that's where the kind of printing businesses or the printing industry that is on the decline. First of all, is that true? Is that your
I would
understanding
say
as well?
so. Yes, that's the research that I've seen. Even when we got to the valuation, they said that this is not they didn't call print a growing industry.
Okay. But then the wide format stuff actually is growing. And it's a
Yes.
completely, obviously, different markets. It's more marketing.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, a lot of it's last mile marketing or just those billboards. You know what? I think it's about $10,000 to get a billboard and actually have it put up on next
Mhm.
to a highway, and then you're paying rent every month on it too, which could be anywhere from $1,000 to $5,000.
Mhm.
Where you can get a vehicle wrap for three or $4,000, a whole wrap looking awesome, and it's a one-time fee. You don't have to, it's good for 3, 4, 5 years sometimes. And
Yeah.
everywhere you go, you're advertising to your customers. If you're a plumber and you parked in somebody's neighborhood, well, guess what? I don't know a good plumber to call. I do, but then they're always busy. And so every time I see one of those, like I even before I was even looking at this business, I would take pictures of that so I could remember it and find their phone number when I needed a plumber or when I needed an HVAC guy.
And just by the way, on vehicle wraps, I've never seen it done, don't know how it's done. So you all print it. Do you all do the wrapping as well?
So we hire out the wrapping. I have third-party contractors that come in and do most of the wraps. Little decals, if it's just like a door decal with your name and a phone number, we'll usually install those in-house because those are usually $300 to $400. They go on rather quickly. The full wraps, a full van wrap, like you take like maybe a Sprinter van or something, that'll take 2 people an entire day to do. And so I like to keep my employees working, making sure my equipment is running, and let the installers do the install.
Okay, great. Very interesting. So what did this business look like in terms of numbers, please?
So they advertised 480 in SDE, and they did about 1.1 million in 2023. And so
Great.
those numbers
those numbers to you looked amazing.
They look great, right? I'm well within my maximum purchase price, and I'm well over my SDE target. Like, just checks all the boxes, repeat customers, multiple employees on site. I have a background.
How many employees, Michael?
They were running 5 people total, but it was a husband and wife team selling.
Okay. So the husband and wife plus 3.
Yes.
So for many guests, that's going to sound like a very, very small business. But for you, you were coming from having done a vending machine solo and having to wear all the hats. This was feeling like a bigger business than what you were used to. And it was checking the box of you don't want to be the person doing everything. So there's this 5-person business feels great to you.
And Brian, it's funny, Brian's shop, my friend, his shop is literally right there. Like, I can throw a stone and hit it. And it was so funny that they were basically the same parking lot. And the fact that he was doing for 16 years, $500,000 with him and another guy, and he was bringing home, in the 150 SDE range, and it's just him and one other guy. So it just seemed like, okay, this is very attainable. And also, I was the crane and rigging outfit and the fabrication. Those are small businesses. A few more employees. I think that fabrication wise, we would vary. We'd be up to 10 employees at the slow season, go up to 20 when we get busy. The crane and rigging, we had about 20, 25 employees out in the field doing the work. So small businesses don't scare me. I had done so much with small businesses, and working at Chatham Steel, they're part of the Reliance Steel and Aluminum, a massive conglomerate. I was so miserable there. No offense, anyone from Chatham that's listening. It just wasn't a fit for me because they wanted me literally tied to this sales desk. I couldn't go into the warehouse and do a stock check because they were worried I'd miss a phone call or something. And and then nobody at the end, but it was all kind of the bickering. Nobody wanted to do a stock check for me. So where normally I could, at a small business, right, I could just walk out and do a stock check and come back. Where there I would wait 2 days sometimes for a stock check. And obviously the customer didn't wait 2 days. They went and bought it somewhere else.
Yeah.
So I realized that the big conglomerates, the massive, was just not for me. I had no fun at Chatham Steel. I'm sorry to say. I was miserable, but I knew the business enough. I was able to make some good commissions on it, but it was just not a good fit for me. So I figured I'd be better off in a smaller business, and 5 employees is, I think, perfect. You can do a lot with 5 people, right? And also there's a huge potential for growth with this as an industry too. I'm like, in this, there's a couple other franchises in the area, and they're doing 2 to 3 times the revenue I am right now. So yeah, like but
franchisees in your same network in the SpeedPro
in
franchise
the SpeedPro
system
world. Yep. Yeah, down at Apex, they're doing almost 3 million. I think they might do more than 3 million this year. And then the Raleigh one, I think they might be around 3 or 4 or something. I mean, they're
so
all
what was your assessment that this store was doing so much less than neighboring ones?
Well, it was basically the owners. So Jerry and Kim, Jerry was he worked for an aerospace. He was a VP director level person. 2008, 2009 collapse hit, and he got laid off. And now him, he was, I don't know exactly what he was making, but he was making a good salary. But when layoffs happen, you start targeting those big numbers that you don't necessarily need. Obviously, the C-suite stays because they're the one making the decision. The people that are putting things out, they stay because we need to keep producing. But the middle management level, they start getting cut. So all these VPs and directors are out there hunting for the same jobs. And he said, this ain't going to work. And so they took out, if you've heard of the Rob's program, they basically used their IRA to buy this, to start up this business. And their whole thing was 15 years. We're going to run this for 15 years and then we're going to retire. And so 2024 was 15 years and they were setting out to retire. So they never wanted to grow too big.
Yeah.
Just because I think they were just basically looking to replace the income they lost from that layoff. And they did that. And I bet you they made a lot more.
That's a perfect narrative for you to get comfortable that this business is not realizing its full potential. That this was a husband and wife team who were basically just trying to ride something out to the end of their careers, hitting a certain income threshold, but they weren't hungry to get as big as possible.
Yes.
So you coming in younger with some hunger could in theory push it much further than they have. And then you have these great benchmarks of these neighboring territories or neighboring stores in neighboring geographies that are doing so much better. It seems that much more realistic that you could double your business. Okay, so is 1.2 million, 480 in SDE, and a 15-year-old business you just finished telling us, and tell us about how the negotiation goes with what did you say their names were?
Jerry and Kim.
Jerry and Kim. So, or I guess you go through the broker for the franchise or the salesperson for the franchise. Take us through through the negotiation and transaction, because there's a couple of interesting twists and turns.
Yeah. So I mean, they wanted a lot of lawyer involvement, which a lot of sellers don't. They were very happy. Like even when I wrote them, so I met them. I showed up enthusiastic. I used the method of, interviewing for the CEO position and taking everything they say and just believing every number they put out there and figuring you follow up and you figure the rest out in due diligence, right? And so I came in there enthusiastic, excited about the business. And it's true, I'm an enthusiastic guy. This is me every single day, Will. So I hope it's coming across. But basically, once the sales guy made the introduction and pre-qualified me as a franchisee, he said, now it's up to you to figure out the rest. So, this came about so quickly. I had just reached out to Live Oak and they gave me they said, okay, sign up for our office hours. That's next Tuesday. And I go, okay. So I signed up for the office hours, but like over the weekend, all of a sudden I'm like, I'm going to go see this place. And then Brian's talking about, he's actually got his business. He's trying to sell too. And I'm like, I got to talk to a banker. And so then on Monday morning, I get out, I go to the SBA's website and they have a list of preferred lenders. And I start going down the list and calling every single one of them, emailing. Most of them never reached back out to me. Huntington even never reached back out to me. Live Oak told me to go to the office hours, which I did. That's a fantastic resource. Anyone can go to it. Just go to Live Oak and sign up and they have office hours every Tuesday.
That's
and they walk you
Lisa
through the
Forrest.
Deal. What's that?
Is that the one hosted by Lisa Forrest?
There was not a Lisa on it.
Okay.
The one I listened to, maybe she's the normal. There was two guys, I can't even remember their name. It was very informative. They put out a lot of good information. It's completely free. So, if you're curious on financing, go sign up for that. You don't even have to transact with them. The deal was pre-qualified through Live Oak, but they were just very, very slow to respond. So I ended up getting a hold of somebody at Truist. Todd took my call day one. Todd got the deal over the finish line at the end of the day, and Todd will still take my call today. So I found my banker just by going down a list and calling people and harassing them. And, if I got told no or didn't get called back, I moved on to the next. Todd told me he goes, bring me in an LOI and then we'll go from there. So I after meeting with them, after seeing the business, I wrote them this little 1-page LOI, and they came back with a list of things they wanted on their LOI from their lawyer. So I wrote a 5 or 6 page LOI, hired my own lawyer, and my lawyer said, well, I can tweak that thing for you, and sent it with about 3 days for them to think it over. They let it expire. And I said, okay, well, I sent a couple emails. They said, we're thinking about it, blah, blah, blah. So I reached back out to the franchisor and I go, hey, this business is really cool. Do you guys have anything else in the area? And he said, yeah, Greensboro is actually looking to sell. So I went out to Greensboro. I spent a day with him. I took a day of PTO and went out to the Greensboro location and hung out with him. He was really cool. He let me in during office hours. We were hanging out for about a half day together. And I said, okay, you know what? I think I'd be willing to move. I'd be willing to relocate if the wife is. And the wife said, yeah, I'm working remote anyways. Maybe keep me close to the airport so I can get up to Pittsburgh from time to time. And yeah, let's see if we can make that one work. So then the night I get back from seeing Sterling's place in Greensboro, I think the franchisor might have been nudging people behind the scenes a little bit. And so that night, 9:00 at night, I get an email from Jerry with a revised LOI and saying, we're ready to sign this at 5:00 tomorrow. So I said, okay. So I stayed up late reading through it. Didn't see anything too terrible in the LOI. I made a couple little tweaks, sent it back and said, this is the document we signed. And they said, okay, that's good. And we met at 5:00 and signed it.
Michael, is there anything back and forth with them in their LOIs, and that they dragged their feet for a few days, and that the franchisor, the salesperson for the franchisor, had to nudge them? Is there anything to glean from that? Anything that they put into the LOI, or you put into your lawyer put into the LOI that we can learn from, or not really? Just kind of a lot of boilerplate and moving the process along.
Yeah, it was a lot of boilerplate stuff. I mean, they changed the LOI to be very much in their favor. Their lawyer did, and I didn't just didn't want to have a lot of back and forth. Time kills deals. So I go, let me just sign the LOI. Let me give him, I think I give him a $10,000 deposit for earnest money. And so I was willing to risk that. And then I send the LOI to my lawyer though, and she looks at it and she goes, you realize that the way they wrote it was basically that they could basically take that $10,000 and run if they really wanted to. And I said, well,
because it was like one of these that was like, if for any reason something.
Yeah, basically
you forfeit this deposit.
Yeah, the only reason I could back out is if I discovered some financial information was inaccurate, that they misrepresented something. And I said, well, I can almost guarantee there's one number, a decimal place off somewhere that I can have an out. And I go, and if their only goal here, and this is, as my lawyer's preaching to me about how terrible this LOI is for me, I said, well, you didn't bat an eye asking me for a $7,500 deposit. And end of the day, if I lose $10,000 on this deal, I will have learned a whole lot. And I'm not going to be happy about it, but I'm going to lick my wounds and get up the next day and go. The other thing I'd say is, when they let the LOI expire, I said, okay. And I moved on. I went and kept looking for other deals and kept searching. I wasn't going to just sit around and wait for them to come back to the table. I knew that I was a pretty qualified buyer based on interactions I've had with people. I know they were talking to other potential buyers too. And I kind of just, I said, I got to let these cards play out. If they think they can find something else, they never negotiated on price. They asked 1.6 million. I offered them 1.4. They never negotiated on price. But yeah, I don't.
So in all of that back and forth with the LOIs, or with the LOI, all the versions of that, the price was not something that they were.
Price never changed. Nope.
Screwing around with. So they asked 1.6, you came back with 1.4, and they didn't touch that. Okay.
Correct.
And then after some back and forth, after them kind of ghosting you momentarily.
I think it was 2-3 weeks of silence. So yeah.
Yeah. And you really had moved on in your mind.
In my mind, I had to, because I wasn't like, it'd be great if they come back, but also I'm listening to the podcast. I'm understanding that these things take time. It might be 2 or 3 years before I find the right business, right? To transact on the first one, that's ridiculous. I got my at bat. I wrote an LOI. Now, if nothing else, I've got a great boilerplate that I can take to the next one that's been lawyer reviewed. I've done the interview, the initial interview. I've learned more terminology. I didn't know what APA was, an asset purchase agreement. They mentioned that on the first phone call, and I'm like Googling it. I'm like, oh, what is APA? Oh, okay. So I'm like trying to fake it till I make it, right? For me, I was looking at it, even when I first saw that business, I go, let me get a rep in, right? Let me get an at bat and just see what happens. I know I can go and buy a course for $10,000 or $20,000. I go, or I can spend some money and just try to do a deal and see what happens.
Yeah.
And I'm one that I don't mind failing. I don't mind falling on my face, because I usually learn a whole lot in that process.
Yeah. Well, you do strike me, Michael. I mean, just hearing your story as somebody whose personal balance sheet has kind of gone up and down and up and down, and you're not afraid to lose money, which I think comes from your experience being able to get yourself back rather quickly to, build your net worth back up from zero here and there.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, yeah. Because end of the day, I could sell. I'm a great salesman, especially with certain industries. And I'm not tooting my own horn. I just know that about myself. I know I can go out and get a job. And the theory, it's been floated 100 times on here, is, let's say I take this business and run it into the ground and declare bankruptcy. And you know what I have to do tomorrow? I have to go get a job. So, yeah. And and working at W-2, I go, okay, so my worst case is my today. My worst case is I have to come back here and tuck my tail between my legs. And even visiting some of my old employers on sales calls, I jokingly walked in and said, hey, wonder if you have a job application. My old boss at the crane and rigging outfit, he goes, for you, I absolutely would hire you in a heartbeat, Michael. And I said, I appreciate that. Unfortunately, I'm taken. So, but I've always built good relationships with my employers. And I think it speaks volumes just about how I do business, that at the fabrication shop, I managed to get hired by both one of my vendors and one of my customers.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a great point, and it is a great kind of backstop to have so much self-confidence and market validation from people who've tried to hire you, would have you back in a second, that you can pretty readily get a job if you have to in a pinch, if everything else goes to hell. Okay, so it's 1.4. The LOI is signed. Then what?
So the LOI signed. It was so funny when the day we signed up, Jerry was like a little kid, and we used a ceremonial pen to sign this thing. And that's why I had a little more confidence. Obviously the lawyer's looking at it and saying, I don't like this clause and I don't like this clause. But Jerry's excitement when I walked in on that Tuesday or Thursday afternoon to use a ceremonial pen, and as soon as I walked in the door, he brought me to the back. Look, we're wrapping the van for you. We're putting a fresh wrap on it, so you have a great start. I think some of that was actually required by the franchise, but I let him take credit for it.
Wait, so what's your point here, Michael? That his excitement to do this transaction made you feel like what?
That he wanted to do the deal, and he was excited to have somebody excited about the business. And I came in excited, and I'm still excited. I'm having the time of my life here. Running the business day in and day out and having it all on the line. And the fact that, like I said, he was just like a little kid with all these little things. For that, I was able to kind of get over some of the clauses that his lawyer wanted to see. Because so could I have negotiated the LOI for another 3 weeks and paid lawyers another 10, 20 grand? I'm sure I could have, and I'm sure my lawyer would have taken the money. But it didn't seem like a good use of capital to me. And once again, what's my risk here? 10 grand? Maybe it sets my search back a couple months. I'll go get some more commissions.
And so the fact that the LOI back and forth with them was a little not smooth, they ghosted you and so on, and they came back with a really unfriendly LOI to you, didn't seem like it soured the relationship. In fact, when you guys get to the signing table, everyone's feeling warm and cuddly. Yeah,
absolutely. So okay. I said, and also I didn't look at it from I didn't send it back to my lawyer before signing it. I just signed it.
Okay. So they were making changes right there at the signing table.
They made changes and then sent them to me the night before. And gotcha. If you're in the legal profession or know anything about it, that's a really bad, it's a really lousy thing to do to somebody, to send somebody a document at 9:00 at night and say, let's sign this tomorrow. That's not nice, but they did it and I tolerated it.
Okay. All right. So you sign?
I signed. We started the due diligence period. One of the first things was I asked my lawyer, I go, make sure that they own the business and have the right to sell it. And the next day Turns out they owned 1.2% of the business. And that's when I discovered the ROBS program and all these layers and everything. And so
they owned what? What did you say, Michael?
They owned 1.2% of the business. Their trust owned 98 point something, the balance, 98.8%. And so it was like, oh, okay. So that's a new discovery, because Jerry and Kim signed the LOI. Their trust did not. They did not sign it as a representative of their trust. So it's just kind of one of those things like, okay, so now we obviously have to sort through this and make sure. This is where lawyers are important, because I don't know. I'm sure I would have discovered that at some point, right? But like, they looked at that and said, oh, look at the tax return. Look who actually owns it. Then we need to we need to review all the trust paperwork to see who would set up, anyone else that has, a controlling interest in it or anything like that, which obviously I did not have any of that pre-LOI. So right then and there, I felt like I had the out I needed with our 30-day due diligence, that I could take my money back and run if I needed to.
Yeah.
And
Michael, just to be clear, that whole ceremonial bit with the pen and the night before changes to the document, that was the LOI signing.
That wasn't the LOI, yeah.
Okay, so it sounds like that was treated with a lot more weight than getting an LOI typically is. I mean, that sounds like it was treated with the ceremony of getting the asset purchase agreements signed.
Yeah.
No?
Yeah, it was. I think the LOI was more ceremonial than the APA. The APA was signed by a DocuSign, circulated on a Tuesday afternoon at some point,
Interesting.
Yeah. So the LOI was kind of more of a statement. We went and did a 30-day due diligence. I had my accountant look at the numbers. Basically he kind of verified, that it was funny, because he goes to me, now I can't tell you this is a good business. I can look at the numbers. I go, you can look at it and tell me if there's red flags or whatever, right? He goes, oh yeah, that's what I'll do. And so I met with him, and I gave him a week or so to go over the papers, and then we met and we kind of talked through it. And I remember as I'm leaving, he goes, this is a good business. And so it was just funny that he even said that he couldn't do it, but then ended up saying, yes, this is a good business.
Great. Fantastic. What do you think that he saw? Just the quality of revenue, the repeat customers,
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah, just see the growth. He saw the numbers have been growing over the past 3 years. They survived COVID. They pivoted, because 30% of their pre-COVID, 30% of their business was trade shows. And so that business disappeared overnight, just gone, right? 30% of your revenue. But they were able to ramp up on the vehicle wraps. And so, they made it work, and they pivoted, and they had I guess their equipment is versatile enough that you can do quite a few things with it. So if one particular sector or industry is dragging a little bit, you can try to push the other ones.
Yeah. And Michael, just on the vehicle wraps, 50% of your revenue comes from vehicle wraps. I'm just asking myself, how many vehicles are really wrapped? When I drive around town, and of course, doing Acquiring Minds, I now notice this sort of thing.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I see, for all of the kind of types of businesses that might have wraps, the plumbers, the landscapers of the world, et cetera, I don't actually feel like I see that many full-on wraps where it's like a nicely done entire vehicle wrap. It still seems like it's not that many vehicles on the road. So I'm just wondering, how many people are really knocking on your door to do a vehicle wrap?
I am, if you wanted to sign up for a vehicle wrap today, it's the 11th of October. I would have to put you on the 7th or 8th of November.
Man. And so what is your capacity? Like one a day to print one of those?
I can do 1 to 2 a day, depending on, if some of them do a 3/4 wrap or a half wrap, I could do 2 3/4 wraps in a day. And so now it does take a little bit of time and planning, because we print the material, and it's a eco-solvent, it's called. And so that actually creates a chemical bond between the ink and the vinyl. And opposed to just printing where you just put a layer of it on there. We can do that, but it stretches better if you use this printer. But that takes a day to dry. So we have to print it, let it dry overnight, laminate it the next day, and then cut it out on our cutting machine. Basically, if you're familiar with a Cricut, I have a giant Cricut that just cuts it out for them. So it's basically 1 day to print, 1 day to laminate and wrap, or laminate and cut, and then another day to install. So we do have a little bit of a process to get it all ready.
Okay. But roughly you're selling one of these a day, 1 to 2 of these a day sort of thing. Wow.
And okay. But I have a fleet customer right now with 16 box trucks. And
of course, a fleet order will fill up a month.
That's 100,000. Yeah. It's about $100,000 project.
Oh, great. Okay.
So so those things do come. And, also the great thing is some of these companies are growing. I'm so excited when they bring me, hey, we're putting 2 new vans on the road. We're putting 2 new trucks on the road, and they buy them. Half the time the dealership delivers them to me, and we wrap them and we get them out the door.
Okay. Back to the transaction. Carry on. Where were we?
All right. So we were in due diligence. There wasn't a whole lot of drama there.
Leaves by saying this is a good business. That's where.
He finished saying that, even though he said he wasn't going to say that.
Right.
Love you, Tim. Sorry if I'm dropping dimes on you here. He's still my accountant. He's awesome. I really like doing business with him. And so I'm at July 9th. I've got my notes here. Was our last day of due diligence. We had our initial LOI said 30 days of due diligence. About a week before that came up, I talked to the banker. They said we need more time. I went back to Jerry and Cam and said, I go 5 more business days. I think July 4th is on a Thursday. I go, we can't count July 4th and we're not counting July 5th. So that pushes due diligence out to July 9th. I talked to the banker the morning of July 9th. This was Ronnie, not Todd. Ronnie's the SBA guy. And so I call up Ronnie. I go, Ronnie, how are we looking? His exact words are all positive feedback, but I don't have a commitment for you today. Mm-hmm. I said, okay. I go, but you feel good? You feel warm and fuzzy? He goes, yeah. I mean, it's all been positive feedback so far. So he kind of, kept his cards a little close to his chest, but let me know that things look good on his end.
Okay.
So instead of asking for another extension, because I just didn't want to, I let the due diligence money turn cold and kind of had that, okay, going behind the moon, right? The dark side of the moon here, coming out the other side. Let's see what happens. And the next day at 10 o'clock in the morning, Ronnie called, my phone rings. It's Ronnie. I'm at my W-2. I walk out into the parking lot. I literally jumped in the air when he's like, yeah, we got a commitment. We're doing it. And so I remember just that moment of excitement, because I was actually worried that the cameras at my work were catching me and they're like, nobody's this happy at work. What's this deal? But it was just, I don't know, it was really exciting, and just kind of this, wow, we're actually doing this. They're going to loan me $1.4 million or 1.3 and change, whatever it came out to be.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. It's an awesome moment.
Yeah. And then, so we got, in the next, I'll say they sent me a commitment letter. Me and the wife signed it, sent it back to them. And then, we get an introduction to the closing team. Closing team is like 10 people. It was outside lawyers, internal lawyers. There's a closing representative, Alicia. She's really cool. She was great to work with too. All these people at Truist Bank. I can't say enough about Truist Bank, to be honest with you. They were good. Even when they were like, here's the commitment letter. By the way, we want a $7,500 deposit. I said, okay, I'm actually driving to Charleston right now. And they're like, no problem. We'll let Charleston's bank go to this bank and we'll let them know you're coming. And like, sure enough, like before we even check into our hotel, I swung by the bank, gave them the check. I was in and out. The bank manager came out, was happy to have me there, shook my hand and everything. So it was like everyone I dealt with at Truist the whole time was just awesome, and just made the transaction, made me feel like my business mattered, where I felt like, $1 million to a bank is nothing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I really like them. Can't say enough about them.
Great. Nice plug.
Yeah. So we're getting towards the closing table, and everything, every step of the way, there's this, you get a whole new list of things you're needed. I got a lot of compliments from people on this, is that nothing sat on my desk for long. When the bank sent me a list of 20 items, if I could knock out 16 of them that night, I knocked out that 16 and said, here's where I'm at on these other 4, waiting on this person, waiting on this feedback. My lawyer's looking over that. My accountant's looking over that. Here's the answers and all the documents for everything else. Once again, closing table, another list of documents. Just started knocking them out. One of the things from the bank was, we need a valuation valuing this business at $1.4 million or more. And so this was I think the biggest hiccup of the whole deal now, because the valuation, it came back and we were about 2 or 3 weeks out from closing, and actually we had 2 hiccups very close to each other here. And the valuation came back at 1.2 million, 1.18 to be exact. And I was like, well, crap, they're not going to go for that. And I was so convinced that this deal was going to go through. I had actually stopped listening to your podcast, Will. I had gone out of searcher mode, and I was actually listening to Jesse Sapphire's owner operator podcast, which is really good because just started to get in that mode of owner operator because I know I'm going to be getting my hands dirty in the next few weeks. And I was trying to get in that mode, and this valuation came in, and I go, I got to get back in searcher mode. I need to be thinking about this because I need to know, I probably need to be looking at other deals because this one's probably falling apart. I had to get that in my head too, that I need to be willing to walk away at this point because I can't do something that if I can't do it, I can't do it. If the money's not there, the money's not there. And so the banker basically said too that I couldn't, they wouldn't, even if I showed up with the money or the sellers offered to take a note, they weren't going to transact above this number. And I was trying to think of some crack deal way of maybe I can hire them as consultants for a little bit to balance it out. Maybe I can cash out some more of this or that, and just trying to figure out what can I do. Maybe I can borrow some money. And I fired up your podcast that morning on the way into work, and Adam Markley, his interview was on. I think it had just come out that day. And I was like, this guy is awesome. I need to talk to this guy. So anyways, I get to work. I send him a message on LinkedIn, and I go, well, I need to still be a good person to do business with, even if this deal is on its deathbed right now. So I forward the appraisal to Jerry and Kim and say, let's talk this evening. We always had a kind of a 7 o'clock. Anytime we needed to talk, it was always 7 o'clock. I think they wanted to get home and have dinner first. And so we set up a 7 o'clock meeting, and I sent Adam that note, and I didn't hear back from him. Work ends at 5. I drive home, and it's 6 o'clock. My wife, and I'm going to interject this, 2 weeks before this, my wife had gotten laid off, which also, that was kind of our other big hiccup because they had, looking at financials, the bank and everybody else, they always asked, what's the household income? And my wife's making a nice paycheck. And then she got laid off. And I remember she got laid off at 9 o'clock in the morning, called me, talked about it. She goes, this is going to kill the deal. I go, it might. I called Ronnie, got to level with you here. I don't need to have any more sunk cost in this. And he goes, no, I think we're good. I'll double check with some people, but I think we're good. Let's keep carrying on. I go, oh, okay. So
why do you think that it didn't factor into their underwriting?
I have no idea. I really don't, because I thought that was an important part of it, how I was going to be able to make the debt payments. But I think there was enough revenue in this particular deal that they go, that this can work. So they came back and said, no, we're good. We weren't going to ask you. He goes, we never would have known. We weren't going to ask for pay stubs or anything like that. And so that was kind of good to know. But he goes, I think part of it too was the relationship I had built with him. The fact that I called him up and was honest with him when it happened. We hit a snag. I didn't try to hide it. I didn't, I just said, let me be open and honest. And I think for Ronnie and Todd, they were kind of like, this is the guy we want to do business with because he's not just going to miss a payment. He's going to call us if he's having a problem, right?
Yep.
And so I think a good portion of it was just the relationship I had built with them over the past couple of months.
It's a great point. It probably was those two factors, that and the numbers out of the business. 480,000 is, that can replace your entire family even after debt payments, even after reinvesting into the business, even after some J curve, that you'll have enough left over to meet the 170 total family income with that your wife not having any money or any income W-2 anymore. Okay. Yeah.
So I get home. My wife had some sort of networking call that she was taking because she's obviously on the job hunt because we need to act like this deal's not going to go through still. We still need to be prepared for this thing to fall apart. So she's out there looking for jobs, taking interviews, doing the networking, all the good stuff you do when you're on a job hunt. So she steps out at maybe 6:15. She's on the front porch. I've got Everly inside, and Everly's being rambunctious. And then Adam texts me, or Adam messages me back on LinkedIn. He goes, I've got 5 minutes. Send me your number. And so that's Adam Markley. I texted him and I go, I'm with a toddler. And he goes, I don't care. So he gets on the phone with me and he goes, all right, I understand you're in a situation. I go, yep, I'm meeting with them in 45 minutes. He goes, give it to me. I don't care. Just tell me what's happening. So we kind of skipped the pleasantries. I told him the situation, the offer, where we're at. Now the bank says it's 1.2 or it's nothing. And he goes, you've just been handed a gift, Michael. Don't look at it any other way. You've just been handed a gift because you know what? They have sunk costs in this too. And no private equity is going to come after them, right? This deal, they would be in the exact same boat with any other buyer. So if they want to pull out and hope they can find something better with a different SBA lender 6 months or a year from now, that's just not going to happen. This is their boat, and they know that as much as you do, that this is the number and this is the transaction. He goes, so what you do is you go and get on that call and you tell them that. You tell them that the bank is the bad guy, you stay the good guy, and when it gets awkward and silent, you sit there in silence. And I said, thank you, Adam. I knew this in the back of my head, but I needed to hear it. I needed this coaching in this moment. He goes, no, anytime, dude. Keep my number. Let me know how it goes. And he actually followed up. A lot of times he was sending me texts. Like it was like 7:15. How's it going, man? So Adam was just, and I'm excited. We're having lunch next week. I'm going to be in Denver where he's at for corporate trading, where SpeedPro's corporate headquarters are. So we're going to have dinner. That's his payment.
Well, what happened in the moment with
sellers? There was an awkward silence. I basically told him that. I really thought it was, I hated the fact that it was not I wasn't able to get the deal I proposed across the line, because I do like to be a person of my word. So I was upset about it. And I think that did come across, that I wanted to be at 1.4. The bank is telling me this is where we're at. We're at 1.2. There is no deal. And I go, tell me what you guys want to do. And they said, well, we'll think about it. And I said, I'm going to continue to pursue this until you tell me not to. And they said, okay. And we never actually had an official, yes, we're going to do this. That price is okay. But within a week, we did have the APA signed with the new price. And so
amazing. Adam Markley.
Adam Markley. He's the best. He's awesome. There's so many factors, so many people. Todd took my phone call on a Monday morning when I'm just going down the list, right? My banker. You got this podcast out there and just started interviewing people and building this community up. And, Walker DeBello had the insight to write a book. And so it was just, there's so many factors that came together. I owe this deal to basically, to all of those people. Any one of those chain links disappears, there may not be a deal.
Mm-hmm. Well, and Michael, can you break down what the deal looked like, that 1.2, where all the pieces of it came from, your equity, SBA, et cetera?
Yeah. So the deal, the project total was 1.3. So basically we were going to give them 1.18. They were going to add $100,000 in to the project total for working capital and closing costs. And that was going to leave me with about $60,000 in working capital. I had to come up with 10%. So I actually just took that out of my home equity. We had almost $200,000 in a HELOC. We took $130,000 out of it. And I, wrote them a check or wired the money. We had to wire the money. Yeah. Then the bank came in with the rest. Mm-hmm. And so, I think that's pretty much it. Did I miss anything on that front?
Sorry. Did you say seller note? Sorry.
No seller note. No.
And why was there no seller note?
They didn't want to do it. They wanted to be free and clear, and I wanted them to be free and clear. And if the bank was willing to back that deal with no seller note, I was fine with it. For me, I thought it was just it'd be less complex.
All right, congratulations, Michael. I'm out of breath over here listening to you. All right. So, and that was what was close date? August,
so we closed on August. I'm sorry. No, it was August. Goodness, August 15th. So yeah. So the funny thing is, though, the week I'm going to close on a Friday and take over on a Monday, and so that. It was pretty solid at that point. So at my W-2, they never knew I was searching. And so that Monday, I went ahead and put in my 2 weeks notice, hoping that they would pay me out, because I knew that sometimes they just kick people out and pay them the 2 weeks. So I kind of hoped they would do that, but they didn't. So Monday goes by, Tuesday goes by, and I was so checked out. Once I gave my notice, like I kept up appearances great, but once I gave my notice, I was just checked out. And they didn't ask me for really anything, exit interview, nothing. They just told me to go back to my desk and work it out. And I go, okay. So then Wednesday comes around, or Tuesday night, one of my bosses was out of town. The other one was just on the phone all day, never had a chance to talk. I sent him an email just saying, hey, I've got a thing I got to do on Thursday afternoon. And then hopefully maybe I can cut out a couple hours early on Friday. And that would be my last day. And so I got to work the next morning, and my boss that was out of town called in, and they said, you know what, we got some PTO, take the rest of the week off. We'll pay you out your PTO. We appreciate you, Dad. If we ever need anything, call us. I said, all right, cool. So I walked out on a Wednesday, finally just this relief. I've got all this room to breathe. I've got the whole weekend to work on the deal, get all these little things in order, finish the employee handbook, blah, blah, blah. I am home for literally 1 hour, Will. And my lawyer calls and she goes, well, there's a hiccup. They don't want to give over the keys until they have money. The bank doesn't want to give over the money until you have ownership. So the best thing to do here is we close on Thursday and you take over on Friday. And I go, oh, crap. So I went from having like the whole weekend, I had, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, plus the weekend to work through everything, to now I have basically a day and a half to get my ducks in a row. And I said, well, let's do it. Let's push through. And so we accelerated the timeline kind of at the last minute. Day one was a little awkward because of that. I took over on a Friday. All the employees stayed. We gave them $1 an hour raise. We added two holidays to the calendar. And my wife came on too. I go, hey, you haven't found a job yet. You want to come work for me? And so she's been working here too, ever since. But Jerry and Kim being lawyer heavy, were like, even once the money hit their account, they wouldn't let the franchise had to switch over the account, basically the system, into my name. And so Friday morning shows up, they still are they have a hold of the business, but it technically belongs to me. But I'm not able to do anything until the money hits the account. And even after the money hit the account, Jerry goes out and calls his lawyer for 30 minutes before he actually gives SpeedPro the nod to flip the switch over to my ad. And so, but one of those things, you get through it, right? What am I going to do at that point?
And your wife working in the business, so you're paying her as an additional employee?
Yes. Yeah. So
that's more expense than you were expecting. But I guess Jerry and Kim were also basically paying themselves the equivalent of 2 salaries. So it nets out to being the same, more or less.
Essentially, yes, given they didn't have the debt payment I have.
Right.
But one nice thing about Truist, and this was different. So I did end up Live Oak and Truist both made offers to me because I kept them both alive for a moment. Live Oak offered me 1 month interest only. Truist offered 6 months interest only. So that was one of the big differences that I didn't even realize. I thought that was kind of SBA boilerplate stuff. I didn't understand that until I got both those offers. I didn't know that somebody was going to give me an offer of 6 months interest only, which is great. And if you think about it, because that your most vulnerable spot is in this 2 to 3 to 4 month range where you get into a little bit of a cash crunch. Because they took out and sold as many jobs as they could. They took as much revenue out of the business as they could in those final days. I came in on that Friday with an $18,000 backlog. Today I have a $65,000 backlog, and we've been holding that $60,000 backlog pretty steady for several weeks now.
No. So how's it been? You said you're having a blast. Tell us more.
I don't know. I like solving problems. I'm so glad that now I can solve problems. When my last W-2 drove me nuts because I would just report the problem and then it took like somebody a week to solve the problem, or it just didn't get solved, or there was, I don't know, the fact that I'm in control of it, I can let the customers know when we have a snag or we have an issue and just kind of work through it with them, where I've worked it, like at my last W-2, they would just go radio silence when they hit a snag, and we would just miss deadlines. We'd be 3 weeks late and we'd say, oh, we're working on it, we'll deliver tomorrow. And the customer's like, no, you're not going to deliver tomorrow. You've lied to me so many times. So the fact that I can run the business and build those relationships, and then, the things happen, but I think also day one, somebody misinstalled a little printer, this cleaning pad that goes on our flatbed printer. So this flatbed printer, it's like $140,000, I think, brand new. It's a little $20 cleaning pad, and you just put it in there and the print heads clean themselves off on it. And somebody didn't put it in right. And the print heads actually hit it for 2 weeks. And then all of a sudden the print quality got really, really bad. And it took a tech a whole day to figure out how to do it or what was happening with it. And then I had to replace, there's 6 print heads. They're $500 a piece. So they all had to be replaced. But we replaced it, right? So I spent $4,000 basically to get it from my normal vendor. Didn't have it. So I had to pay a higher markup at a different vendor, plus overnight shipping and all this. But I don't know. These are just things that happen. And I didn't lose my mind. I know who. So I could easily blame Diego and say, Diego, you idiot. How dare you break this machine? You should have known how to install that. No, guess what? That pad was visible to everybody. You can see it through a window. And there's, obviously Jerry and Kim were here for 4 weeks afterwards. They could have seen that it was misinstalled. I have a production manager. He's got 25 years in the business. He could have seen that it was misinstalled. And also he did that maintenance on the day he got a big shock that I took over the business, right? So I go, I'm at fault here. So I kind of spread the blame out and said, we learned the lesson, and I threw out the pad and I go, and it's water under the bridge now. I didn't cry about the money. I knew I'm going into business. I know I'm going to spend money. I know there's going to be things unforeseen are going to happen. One of my vehicle wrap printer's dying. I can only run it at its very slowest speed right now, and it's obsolete, and it takes 2 weeks to get a tech to look at it, and it's a 4-week lead time on parts. So, so guess what? We spent about $20,000 to buy a new printer, and that's getting installed next week. Mm-hmm. But I think it's just been nice that I've been able to make these investments, right? And show that we're not in here trying to squeeze money out of the business. We're in here trying to build the business. Mm-hmm. I was just telling you, we delayed 30 minutes. My main sales lady, Beth here, her computer has just been horrible since we switched over the system. Everybody's looked at it. It's just not working. I go, I'm done fighting with this thing. What's a new computer cost? $400. So I got her a new computer, and she's like, somebody bought me new equipment. She was so excited. And I looked at the year of the old one too. It's from 2010. I mean, so how long can you limp along a 14-year-old computer for? So I was excited to be able to do that, because guess what? Now she's not having to reboot her computer. She's making sales, which is, I think, what she wants to do anyways.
Michael, to start closing us out, so you'd gone down and looked at that Greensboro location and hit it off with, I think you said his name was Sterling.
Yeah, Sterling Kelly. Yeah.
One of the big appeals of buying into a franchise system is that acquisitions can be much more seamless. Programmatic is a word you'll hear. Do you feel like either his business or some of these other territories that are doing so well are realistic acquisition targets for you in the near term?
I think so. I've texted with Sterling a couple times. I've not been able to get him on the phone. He said he does have a buyer, and they're working through the APA, but I don't know exactly where they're at. I don't know. They didn't do an LOI, was my understanding. They were going straight to the APA. And so I'm not sure where he's at right now. I've tried to call him literally 3 times in the past week, and it just goes to voicemail. So I don't know. I'll reach out again. I think there's potential there. There absolutely is. But if he's very close to the finish line, maybe he just doesn't want to hear it from me. I would think, if anything, if he's near the finish line, I was going to congratulate him and wish him well and whatnot. But I don't know. He hasn't taken my call for some reason. So, okay. But Brian does need to sell, actually. And he is still for sale. I got an LOI from him after I bought this, but my bank said they wouldn't do a deal until they wanted 1 year worth of financials. And so
from you in your new business.
Yes, correct. I was like,
and Brian is your running group guy.
Yeah, my running group friend.
So he's selling.
He's selling, yes.
Oh, and he's the one who you can throw a rock and hit his shop.
Yes.
Oh, that would be great.
Right?
Bolt on.
Yeah, it'd be fantastic.
But by the way, being in a franchise system, what does it look like to be able to, or not, buy a business outside the franchise system?
So they encourage it. Now, I asked this question early on, and I said, "What do you think of this?" And they go, "Oh, well, if you did that, we would give you reduced royalty on that business for the first couple of years." So they encourage it. Essentially, they had no issue with it. They said, "Yeah, bring on the business." SpeedPro,
but it's folded in. But then it becomes folded into your SpeedPro.
Correct.
Business.
All the customers would get a tag on them, and every sale on those would be at a 2% royalty versus a 6 or a 4% royalty. Yeah. Okay. So they're encouraging it. SpeedPro's not that big either. We're about 120 studios countrywide. They're pretty flexible. It's not McDonald's where this is the menu that you are going to sell. They go, no, sell what works for you. Not everybody does vehicle wrap. Some people are doing a lot more of the wall murals. Some people are doing more window wraps, those perforated windows that all the retail outlets are doing. And so, you're kind of allowed to pick and choose which markets you want to go after and what offerings you want to make. And, we can sell each other's stuff, right? If Greensboro, he has a sewing machine, I don't have a sewing machine. So if I wanted to sell a sewn flag or a sewn banner, I could have Sterling, if you take my call, I could have Sterling make it for me, and I'd buy it from him and then mark it up and sell it to my customer.
Anything more to say about working in the franchise system? Just not SpeedPro specific or otherwise, just the feeling of being in a franchise system, or the on the ground realities of being in a franchise system?
So I ultimately look at it as a positive. I try to be a positive guy, but even looking at the deal initially, kind of going it over with the wife, talking about how it all works, what makes sense, what doesn't make sense. End of the day, yes, we're going to sign a personal guarantee for the loan. The truest does not want our house. Like they have no interest in coming and getting our house. They have interest in working with us and getting the loan paid back. I think I just saw my commission or my royalties. I just paid SpeedPro over $4,000 today for last month's royalties. They don't want that money to shut off. So I look at that as a positive, that if I'm having an issue and I have a snag, I can go to them and say, can you help me with this? And they'd be like, yeah, because I really want that revenue to keep coming in, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that was the viewpoint I took it on as.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of just thought, okay, especially since I'm new to this, it made it so I don't feel like I'm completely on my own. I have asked the owners. There's a group email that only the owners are on. If you have an issue, send a question. Somebody will answer it. Every single question I've sent out, except for how do you get AT&T to change over accounts, somebody answered. So I look at it as a positive.
And was there training offered to you to come in as a new franchisee and be running a printing shop with, really high, expensive, involved equipment?
So I am going to business training next week in Denver. So no,
that was the Denver. Of course, that's where you're going to see Adam and take him to dinner.
Yeah, but I came in, no industry experience. I don't know. I mean, everybody, they asked for your resume. The bank wants your resume. The franchise wanted your resume. Nobody ever asked me more questions about it. Once I gave them my resume, everybody was happy with it.
So what is the expectation of your day-to-day, Michael, by the bank, by the franchisor, by your employees? That you'll do some of the printing work yourself, or no, that you'll just be working on the business as a manager? So
that is my goal. I have no intention of learning to run the equipment. I mean, I jump out there from time to time and do some of the more tedious things that any monkey can do. But I have yet to load a roll into the printer. I have yet to run a board through the flatbed printer. I have yet to run the laminator. I think if I'm doing my job correctly, I won't have to do those things. Mm-hmm. Even back at the fabrication shop, Doc, our shop foreman, love you, Doc. I remember I worked on the shop floor for a while, and then I went into the office, and then from time to time I'd go out and try to help in the shop. And Doc came to me one day and he goes, Michael, I want you to understand what I'm telling you. You are really good at that office work. You're really good at doing the business. And I said, okay, Doc, I'll leave. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Doc is managing up.
Yes, yeah. He goes, stay up. He basically told me, go sit and go stay in the office. Go make another sale, okay? He goes, if you don't have anything to do up there, that's a problem. You should be selling something. I go, all right, thanks, Doc. I appreciate it. So I'm not a good welder.
I mean, that's what so many Acquiring Minds guests want, is to be working on the business, not in the business. So, and having your employees kind of encourage you in that is probably a good thing. And it also just means that, at least Doc, I don't know about your other two, have really got it dialed. They just kind of, want to do their technical work and have you stay out of the way. That this is probably a sign of quality.
I think that is what I brought to this business. Jerry and Kim, for lack of a better term, I've heard them from former employers, former employees and current employees. They're described basically as micromanagers. They were very, very hands-on on every single project that came in. And you can even see it. Look at the Google reviews. Jerry and Kim did this. Jerry and Kim were awesome. They all got great reviews, but it was all about Jerry and Kim. I tried to not be that. I was actually so excited. I've gotten 3, and one of them named Beth. Beth is so good to work with. I was so excited when they named Beth, not me, because that she's out there and she's able to sell. I think they had a rule for her, anything over $500, they have to review. I go, if you're good with it, quote it. I go, if we screw it up, we're going to learn from it. And, I go, if you want my opinion on it, I'm happy to give it. I'll look it over. But if you got it, go make a sale. And, we're going to make mistakes. We're going to have a $4,000 screw up that we're going to replace some parts, and it's going to happen. I'm going to sell a project. I already did. I sold one project for $1,200. I think I got it out the door for $1,500. So, but you know what? But we did it. We satisfied the customer. $300. Am I really going to cry about that? No, I learned now. I understand how that project should have gone, and I'll know better next time, and I'll sell it for $4,000,
Michael, anything else that we didn't get to? Any other things that you wanted to make sure was said that I didn't ask?
One thing that actually, so right after our pre-call the other day, I got an email from my landlord, and Western North Carolina was hit very hard. If you remember from Hurricane Helena, or Helene, and people want to do something, right? And they don't know what to do. And so our landlord emailed us and said, here's a list of things that Operation Airdrop needs. We will be by your place in 2 days to collect anything that you can find. So I sent that list to my customer list. I sent it out on social media. I dropped it off over at my kids' daycare school. And we filled the conference room with exactly what people needed. Then they came over, then the landlord came over, gathered it, took it to Western North Carolina, and Operation Airdrop had pilots flying over places that were cut off, dropping literally life-saving supplies. At my last W-2, if I wanted to send that email out, I would have to go through 3 weeks of legal before I could send an email like that. But I was able to engage my community so quickly. It was so just, I guess, I'm trying to think of the word here, but it was just like
empowering.
And not empowering. It just showed that I was on the right path because I was able to do something so quickly. And it also just showed me how important small businesses are in communities. And then, so even on my run club, I go to my run club on Saturday, and Philip, who's this Frenchman, really cool dude. Once again, I've run with him for years. I didn't know he was a pilot. He was like, he was like, oh yeah, I was out flying for Operation Airdrop this week. And I was like, bringing things in. And so, I don't know, that was something that was just really cool to me. Validating. That's it. That was the word. It was validating. It validated the value of small businesses in the community and how we can impact our community in ways I didn't think I would be able to. Like, being a positive impact in the community is always been a top priority with this. I want to give people a good wage. I get excited when I hear my employees talking about not scraping by. Oh, did I tell you about the motorcycle I just bought? Or we're saving up to go on this big trip. Like, I'm so excited that they're able to do that they're making enough money from the business to be able to do more than just get by. Yeah. So little things like that I've kind of seen in the past couple months, they've been very validating that I'm on the right path and doing the right thing.
A beautiful note to end on, Michael. Thank you for that. If people want to reach out to you, how do you prefer they do that?
LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn, Michael Johnson. Probably best to link through you because I'm going to be, there's a lot of Michael Johnsons out there. But you can you can hit me up on, the SpeedPro Raleigh Northwest, which it's a bit, I don't know, the naming isn't the greatest. That's my territory, but I'm actually located in Morrisville. We're in the Raleigh area. But if you look up SpeedPro Raleigh Northwest, that you'll find me there. I manage those social media accounts for Facebook and LinkedIn. But just don't confuse that with Raleigh because that's Word. Word's great too, but it's just, that's not me.
Okay. Okay. Awesome. Michael, thank you very much for coming on. Great story, great enthusiasm, great speed.
SpeedPro.
just really wonderful to hear that you're having so much fun and feel so validated by the early steps down this path.
Well, I'm so thrilled to be here. Like I said, from being a listener to being on the podcast, this is a little dream come true for this year. It's been a crazy year for me, but I wouldn't have it any other way. So thank you for having me on and let me tell my story. And everybody out there listening, just do it. You can do it. It's all possible.
Perfect point to end on. Thanks, Michael.
All right. Thank you, Will.
I hope you enjoyed that interview. Make sure you subscribe to the Acquiring Minds channel below. We are now publishing twice a week, so tons of new interviews and stories to come, stories that will help you along your own path to acquiring a business.